Hello, and welcome back to the Test Drive Podcast, brought to you by Sport Car USA. I'm your host, Lee Bodette. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to our Test Drive Podcast number 42. I'm Lee Bodette, your host. I've been a radio broadcaster for over 40 years. I host the series called Test Drive, that is, on the YouTube channel, and I'm the front man and host of Sport Car USA, and obviously a car enthusiast by entire life. My co-host, as always, is Scott Nickerson from Sport Car USA.
How are we doing, Lee?
We're doing great. We're very excited today. Our guest is John Malinowski, and John, tell us about yourself, background, where you grew up, where you live now, and what you do for a living.
Oh, sure. I was born and raised in Western New York. When I graduated from college, I moved down to IBM. I was actually in Western New York. I was a field service engineer for IBM for Selectric typewriters and copiers. Then I took a position in IBM Research in Yorktown Heights. Spent about 10, 12 years down there. Moved up to the Burlington facility in '96 and been here since, living in Jericho.
Well, many of our listeners and people that are viewing us today have heard about Cars and Coffee, but there are some that have not. Tell us what Cars and Coffee are all about.
Well, it's, just a name. Anyone can host one. You may have seen it. There's a national events around. They've gotten very large. In fact, so large that some of them had to shut down. It's just a gathering of car enthusiasts. We really don't want to, I guess it's called Cars and Coffee because you don't want to call it a car show, as that whenever you hear show, you think there's judging.
Right.
And when there's judging, not everybody shows up. So in this case here, I picked it up around 2015. It was originally started by George Walker, Al Barber, and Drake Wallace, and they were doing it at the South Burlington High School, and they also had one going in Barry. And I participated in that. And then around, I think, end of early 15, George just disappeared. And a few of us got together. We still liked having it. And I guess I just may have raised my hand too high or something like that. And I took on the task of learning to be a promoter. No, and that's just has been a whole broadening experience.
Sport Car USA is based in Vermont, northern Vermont, and John, of course, you are in Vermont as well. Are you covering the entire state, or is it New England, or where?
No, I'm local. I have primarily the event in the U Mall currently, University Mall, through the VAE. The VAE also supports a event in Middlebury.
Yep.
That is started up last year. There's another Cars and Coffee event that goes on in Barry that I'm not associated with. So whenever you see, I have a website, Cars Coffee Vermont, and of course a Facebook page, Cars Coffee Vermont, and that is always primarily the events at U Mall and Middlebury. You may be aware that we host some off-site events, Vermont Sports Car, Renline, Bag Riders, and Husky Technologies.
Yeah, I've noticed that you've branched out to do stuff kind of outside of the U-Mall grounds, which, speaking from, I think we attended one or two last year, and it seems like a great spot. You obviously have coffee places close by, and who are some of the businesses that you work with kind of to make all this happen?
Well, clearly, it's the U-Mall.
Right.
The U-Mall is actually from a population perspective, it's the ideal location. It's close to the, many people. You have plenty of room. And the U-Mall has been very welcoming. They've been great to work with. But the piece you learn is that when I started doing this, when I first picked it up, we were at a church over on Williston Road. Yeah. And what it really came down to was insurance. One of the things I learned is that there is no real public property that you can just use. Every piece of land is owned by someone or the state. And if you're going to organize an event, you need to get permission to use that property. And oftentimes there's an insurance requirement.
Right.
So we went through with the U-Mall and then the Vermont Auto Enthusiasts. I associated with them as an outreach because they're I think the largest club in Vermont, longest running, the Waterbury Show. They have a lot of great support there. And it's just an idea of how to keep the hobby going. So they came on board, put support. So we have the U-Mall, the VAE, IHOP provides our coffee.
Oh,
And
great.
they've been doing this since we started. They've been great there on that. Vermont Blue Advantage provides donuts. So that piece works out really well. They appreciate that, and they're at all our U-Mall events. And then O'Reilly's gives away $50 every event.
Wow.
So I have two $25 gift cards, and in fact, if you show up in May, I'll give away $100.
Nice.
So there'll be 4 $25 gift cards, and all you do is come to our table. You know, I ask that you look at the VAE magazines. The whole idea is to support the VAE and keep the hobby going. And then we have a drawing usually about 8:30. So you don't have to pay for the raffle or anything. It's free money.
The VAE is the car club, the Vermont Automobile Enthusiasts. We've had them on Sport Car USA in the past. And of course, the U-Mall that John is referencing is located in South Burlington, Vermont.
You know, as you had, you're aware, our association with the Vermont Sports Car Run Line, it's all auto enthusiasts. It's the hobbyists. And, you know, we associate with them, and obviously we have our membership flyers there. But it's been great. You know, the mail list is then done, and as you see, all those events have been extremely popular.
Yeah, I've noticed that, just scrolling through the Facebook page, there is also a wide variety of vehicles too. You're not getting, all domestic muscle or all tuner stuff or all classics. It's a really healthy mix. And there's lots of people bringing things that like they don't have to be $100,000 cars to make it fun. So I think that's what
right.
helps the enthusiasm is just people with cars that they love, regardless of, the price tag.
And I think that's the piece of not having any judging.
Mm-hmm.
No one's afraid. They all show up, and you see a lot of unique stuff. We've had Freightliners show up, Peterbilts.
That's
Tractors show up there. We've had top alcohol dragsters show up. You have motorcycles, scooters, everything. And, on the days when you have, the weather forecast is all good, we've had between 150 and 200 cars, which I think is pretty good for the area.
Yeah, that's a pretty good showing on, and weather is always a factor in these.
Mm-hmm.
So,
one thing I do want to bring out is I've been impressed with the people who show up. When you look at attendance, maybe 40% are regulars and the rest is just transients, a couple times here and there. But the people seem to have come to understand that, behavior is very important. It's a car gathering. We're on private property. Need to be grateful for the location. And I've actually had a couple instances where, some people were really just trying to have fun in their own ways. And other people in the car show went over and talked to them and told them to knock it off.
Right. Well, it doesn't take much to ruin it for everybody. And then, they won't let you come back or,
How often does this happen? It's once a month, correct? Or
well, the U-Mall is scheduled. We have 6 events. It's third Saturday of every month. And then we have additional off-site events. So last year we had 2 at Vermont Sports Car, a spring and a fall, 2 at Renline. Renline doubles up with the Porsche Club, the Green Mountain Porsche Club for their day. So that's all there. And then we've done Bag Riders once, and Husky, I believe we did twice. And they have a nice parking lot. They have a large facility there, but they're a little bit off in Milton, they're a little ways away from Burlington area. So our opening event the last 2 years has been at Vermont Sports Car, and it's a week before the U-Mall.
Oh, cool.
So I think the U-Mall is on the 18th, so Vermont Sports Car will be on May 11th.
And John, you mentioned that there are no awards, and we've been to many car shows, probably the 3 of us, many, many car shows. It gets very competitive and sometimes over competitive. Without the awards, people are just relaxed. They're just there to kick some tires and tell stories about their vehicle and ask questions about another person's vehicle.
That's exactly what happens. You see people wandering, families will show up. And you also see groups. I've often seen, say, 6 Subarus show up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They meet up someplace else and come in as a group. It's just very welcoming. And again, it's great to see the auto, all the enthusiasts there. It is 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 to 9, so that's a bit early. But the idea is that then you have the rest of your day to do something.
Yeah, I think that, we've said a couple of times, this is really about the enthusiasm. So you get people out there because they want to be, and not because they're there to win something. Although there is things that you can win, but is that a random drawing? Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah. So we have the coffee area. People will come by and get their coffee, and then I'll offer them a raffle ticket.
Oh,
and
cool.
I just hand the tickets out. Oftentimes my wife would be there and she would go through the crowd and hand them out also. And then I just get on the megaphone and draw the numbers.
Cool.
And give them out right there. So, for our drawings, it will be, two $25 gift cards for O'Reilly's. And we give away year memberships for the VAE.
We've talked to people from the VAE, and they have members all over the world. It's not just a Vermont club, although it is the biggest in the state. It's definitely something that would be pretty high value there, a year membership. So
it is. And I'll go with one question that is often asked when I hand it out is, so what does the VAE do?
Yep.
And I guess myself, I've always kind of associated them with the older cars, but there are muscle cars in there. There's newer cars. There's people with Corvettes. But the biggest thing I find with the VAE and our outreach program is the Golden Wrench Award,
yep.
which I believe you had Wendell on and spoke about. That's $500 and tools to each tech center every year to a junior. And then we give away 6 $1,000 scholarships for continuing education for seniors.
Yeah.
Most car clubs don't really participate in the community like that.
Yeah, and I think that's really what is going to keep the traditions alive, is starting at a young age. You have these kids who are interested in automotive to some degree, and you have to foster that so that they keep enjoying it and have passion for it later in life.
What's the total as far as the most cars that you've had at a Cars and Coffee? And can people come anytime within that 2 hours?
Yeah. So, I stopped, we stopped counting maybe last year because there was just too many. And, the car count is difficult because it is over 2 hours. But on numerous occasions, we've touched 200.
Wow.
So, we fill up from Dorset Street down to Penny's.
Wow.
So it's pretty good. It's a good turnout. Like I said, it's over the 2 hours. And given the population of Vermont, with the muscle, with cars, it's great to see the enthusiasm.
Yeah, for sure.
Get people up that early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you develop your passion for cars, John? Was it a little boy growing up, or?
Well, I've always been. My dad was a mechanic, and moved up through the ranks. I've worked as a beer truck mechanic, golf cars. I've done golf cars in high school and so on. And as I said, the mechanical work, like a Selectric typewriter, is a purely mechanical machine. And, you guys have probably never seen one apart, but they are fantastic. It's really impressive what they do. But then somehow things changed where I'm very mechanical. I like hands-on. I went into the semiconductor world where I guess you become an Imagineer because you can't see anything. You have to have a scanning electron microscope. You have to really imagine what's going on. And I spent 40 years as an Imagineer. But all the time, I've still had my mechanical instincts. I do all of my own work, on the cars, on the house, pretty much everything. Not afraid to take the challenge on and also, go ask for help when needed.
Have you restored a vehicle in the past?
Yes, actually, at one time, I did vehicle restoration. Well, before I started with research, I was ASE certified in auto body. So I had my certification. I went through Skill Olympics, with New York and placed down at the Concord at one time. So my, other than some rust work, nothing really major in the last 30 years. However, I do have a 2009 Pontiac G8, by the way, purchased at Handy, that recently maybe 10 years ago now, an LSA blower fell on top of it.
Ooh.
And so, we put down some power and I learned an awful lot about building reliability.
That's fun.
So I've done a lot of that work.
What else have you owned besides that, as far as like fun cars?
Well, fun car, I would probably have to go back to my 67 GTX.
Oh, fun.
With the 446 pack. Yes. That was end of high school. That was a lot of fun.
That sounds like trouble for someone that age.
Yeah. I might have gotten 1 or 2 lectures.
Yep.
Actually, the best story was the biggest lecture I got was from my dad after he borrowed it from a while, and then somebody talked to him while he was driving it. But anyways.
Is there a dream car of yours, John, that you wish you could own someday?
That's kind of a hard one because, technology moves. While I have my G8, which is, 2009 vintage, it's not bleeding edge. There is a bunch of technology in there, and I do really like the simplicity of a carburetor, or kind of the simplicity, and not all the wires and hoses and all that. But when you say that, I really kind of think that I'd be jonesing for like a CTS-V wagon, a V2 wagon. Something like that. I mean, I like the sleeper aspect, but I also like that GTX. I might possibly go back for one of those.
Mm-hmm. What's your perception of the future of electric cars? Loaded question.
I actually, my wife owns a Volt, which is a plug-in hybrid. It's primarily an electric car for the first 60 miles or so. Mm-hmm. I think the car is fantastic. Actually, it runs, it works really well for us. Probably 85% of the miles on it are electric, but I don't see the infrastructure there yet. And the cost-wise, it's not cheaper. I mean, it's been in the news lately, and when you own one of those cars, you start understanding that when you plug in at home and you're paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour, that's one thing. If you have to plug in on the road and you're paying 50 cents a kilowatt hour, it's another thing.
Yes. Right. Yeah. It's nice when you can plug in to someone else's electricity, and just.
Well, it's the price, right? I mean, that's where you're at. So, I mean, they're there. I think they're ultimately will get there, but it'll be years yet.
And do you have people that come with EVs to Cars and Coffee ever?
Oh yeah. Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had a gentleman, and he was giving rides out. They were viewed as the magic carpet ride.
What was he driving?
And it was a S, I believe. It was a Tesla.
Oh, Tesla. Yep.
It was a big Tesla. And that's even then you learned how at that point in time, the self-driving, how it didn't really work in Vermont because
our roads.
He explained it. The striping on the roads, it read the striping on the roads, and in other states, when you go to the off ramp, they have a dotted line that goes across it. In Vermont, we didn't.
Oh.
So the auto driving was following the solid line, and it would try to take the exit for you when it didn't really want to.
Huh. It's never
those little things you
about
learn.
That. Yeah, I mean, I've lived in Vermont my whole life, so I've never really thought about that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Here at Sport Car USA, we buy and sell modern muscle cars. You've heard that the Camaros last year is this year. The Dodge Challengers last year is this year. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the market drives it. I mean, there's, the government and some people have been pushing the electric cars, but, as you're well aware, the manufacturers have all backed off on building them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I hate to see the V8s go, but I kind of understand, if that's where the market's driving it, if the customers don't buy them, they'll bring the V8s back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what'll happen, because I find it really hard to believe that they will go away forever just because of all the demand that people would still have for them. But if we don't have a choice, we don't have a choice, I guess, in that.
Well, the question I would ask is, when we talk about automobiles, how as we go on, it seems to become more and more just a transportation appliance.
Right.
Right. The enthusiasts just, may not always be there. I can tell you that I previously had a Saab 97X, which was really a Trailblazer SS, and I had a LS2 in it. I sold that and picked up a new Tundra with the twin turbo V6, and it's not the same. The throttle response the V8 was just there. The V6 is not.
Yep. Still great, but different.
Oh yeah, it tows.
Oh yeah,
it runs. It does its job very well, but it is different.
Right, the way that they react, and even like going back to like when vehicles change from electronic to electronic pedals, basically. That whole feel is different.
Yes.
Or when you're pulling a mechanical cable that's moving the throttle on the engine, that's immediate. So.
And probably most people don't realize that they're not pulling a cable.
Right. It's all electronic now.
And there's something about the sound of a V8. you could probably close your eyes at one of your cars and coffee and tell which vehicle is coming to the event, like pulling into the parking lot, if you will, whether it's a Chevelle or a Corvette. You just know that sound.
Absolutely.
Is there any favorite memories or favorite vehicles that you have from the event?
There's been numerous ones, like I said, some of the old Mopars that show up, the old Cudas, and then you go to, there's been, the Ford GT. There's been a couple of those that have showed up. There's been brand new Vets. There's just a whole variety. And, sometimes one just catches your eye and they're just different. And as you had, realized there's some that are in really top-notch shape and there's some that are getting ready to be top-notch.
Right. Yeah, and being so close to Canada is nice too. We definitely see a lot of Canadian vehicles come down. I don't know if you've had that at any of your shows.
Not many, but
I've definitely seen. There's lots, we're 10 minutes from the Canadian border here. So just up in Montreal, there's all kinds of people with really, really special vehicles. There's a big car culture in that area.
I think the 7 a.m. probably is the limiting factor for them.
That makes it a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
And it works out actually pretty nice that one of your first shows is the same day as our first car show of the year. And it's basically you could go right from Cars and Coffee directly to our show, and you could have a full day, and you can go from having coffee in the morning to all kinds of good food at our show in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
You almost said beer, didn't you? You almost said beer.
No. That sounds like trouble. Beers and coffee doesn't work quite as well as Cars and Coffee does.
John Malinowski, the promoter of Cars and Coffee in the Chittenden County area of Vermont. John, is there a car or two that maybe has really stuck out when it arrived at the University Mall in South Burlington over the years?
As I shared it, it's just such a wide variety. It's tough for me to do that. In my mind, I really like the GTX body style. Like I said, some of the old Mopars, but we have such a variety. I mean, you get some of at one time we had the 4x a couple of Jeeps. And the interesting thing was that there was 3 of them there. And so one was parked in one spot and the other 2 pulled up alongside him and curled up on the tires.
Oh, cool.
So you had like a triangle, and there's just a whole variety that you walk around and, some of it brings back memories maybe from high school and whatnot. But I'm just impressed by the variety of what comes out. Well, you would never expect many of these things to show up.
And like you said, you have about 40% or so of regulars. So, if you go 1 month, you should go again and again and again, and you're going to see all kinds of different vehicles month to month. So that's the kind of fun part about it is someone might be busy on this Saturday and they have a cool car, but they can come the following month. And
they do,
You mentioned how popular these Cars and Coffee shows are around the country now. Have you ever had a chance to talk to any of the other Cars and Coffees around the world or the country, excuse me? Yeah.
No, there's really not any much interaction there. Like I said, I've known from what I've read where some of them have gotten so large that they were just uncontrollable. And I can easily see where that would happen. So we're pretty low key on that aspect. Like I said, the people really take care of it and police it themselves, which I'm very appreciative of. And like I said, I have talked to the folks down in Barrie. I mean, they put their show on and they've had some good turnouts. And we're starting the ones in Middlebury. I believe it's going back again this year.
Awesome.
It'll be on the Facebook page and the web page.
Do you have days planned for those? Or are they going to be?
It's going to be, I think it's the second Saturday.
Okay. So you can have one just about every week.
Yeah, so there'll be, I think the Middlebury and the Burlington ones are, adjacent weekends. And then, like I said, for the Burlington area, I'll do the other ones at the Vermont Sports Car, Renline, Bag Riders, as those people request it.
Which is another thing that those are all companies that hopefully we can get on the podcast in the future, but those are Vermont companies. Those are companies that are started or are almost all, if not all their manufacturing is right here in Vermont. I know Vermont Sports Car they're doing incredible things. They have people like Travis Pastrana on their team, and it's right here they're in Milton, I believe.
Yes.
So, right here in rural Vermont, there's a super big car company that's doing really, really cool stuff.
And, the event at their shop is, it's an open house. And so they have a very fine facility. It's clean room.
Yep.
And they have some of their sample cars in there. They have apparel, but it's an open house facility. So it's more than a car show. It's more than a car event. You can tour the factory.
Yep.
Or just a window tour.
And are Renline and Bag Riders the same way? They kind of open up?
Yes, they are.
Awesome.
Yep.
And I know.
Yeah. So the buildings.
I know what Bag Riders does. They do air suspension and things like that, but I'm not quite familiar with Renline. I know you talked about them being part of the Porsche Club.
Yeah, so I believe they've been primarily Porsche aftermarket parts.
Okay.
And, they manufacture stuff there. I'll often see Facebook posts where they're requesting cars from local people to test fit,
oh, cool.
New items. So again, it's a pure, Vermont facility.
That's something you wouldn't think of either, is Vermont and Porsche.
No.
But we considering we can only drive these cars for a third or a quarter of the year, we have quite a good group of people that are very passionate about the cars. So,
and we work with the Green Mountain Club. We have a Porsche day for the Cars and Coffee, and a good number, probably maybe 25, 30, you show up there, which to me is pretty good, and they're all vintages.
Awesome. Yeah, it might be cool to, on the day that we have the show at the same time, to kind of organize a cruise too, to kind of see if we would be able to bridge the gap a little bit.
I mean, I can certainly advertise it some, or promote it, and let folks know. Except that primarily, I think most of the activity is through the Facebook page. I don't. At least when I haven't updated I guess I look at it and say, I have a web page out there. And there's been a couple of times when I haven't updated it and nobody said anything, and it tells me maybe they're not looking at it. I don't know.
Yep.
But the Facebook one is usually the one that is right up to date.
Okay, cool.
You mentioned your wife helps out. Are there other volunteers? Do you need volunteers?
Oh, you can always use some volunteers because that's a Saturday. Doing this stuff does consume time. I mean, it's not free. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that. Even hosting the podcast. You're looking at 8 to 10 hours at least if things go okay. Actually, my daughter is the one who generated the web page. So, then I've learned how to maintain that. And a few of the other VAE memberships, if I'm not able to, be there, they pick it up. So usually any support is through the VAE group. So they're very active. You'll find, a number of the members there all the time.
Well, John, we will let you go here in just another minute or two after you can kind of give us a recap of what Cars and Coffee is all about, where the first one's going to be, when it's going to be, and who can participate. Can't talk today.
Well, anyone can participate. There's no admittance. It's not a club, which actually has its own challenges. But it's open door. Anyone can show up. It's 7 to 9 a.m. Our first event will be at Vermont Sports Car in Milton. You can look them up on the web. I think it's VT Car. So that's our first one on May 11th. Our first U-Mall event will be on May 18th, and that's where we will be handing out the O'Reilly gift cards, the VAE memberships, and coffee is there. So that's the first, and then it's the third Saturday of every month until October.
Awesome.
Okay.
May 18th, we should be there. We're gonna bring some calendars, some Sport Car USA calendars for you.
That's great. I have a table where we hand out, all of that stuff.
Awesome. Nice. We'll bring some stuff for you to give out then.
Okay.
All right. Well, John Malinowski, want to thank you very much for being with us. John, of course, the head of the not the Sport Car USA, but the head of the Cars and Coffee, with the first one coming up on May 11th. And we'll all go to the website and check out the other dates as well. John, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for listening to our Test Drive podcast number 42. I'm Lee Bodette, your host. And be sure to check out our Test Drive series on YouTube. We'll see you next time on our next Test Drive podcast a week from today. And remember, let's never forget the men and women serving this great country of ours. Thanks, Scott Nickerson. Goodbye, everybody.